We're live! Hey! Happy Sunday new time, everyone. The rains have passed here. The ground screw says we're going to be able to get in this podcast today. It's the only fantasy podcast proving to be 73% effective in random double-blind trials. The Mets have so many outfielders, they've actually traded one to the Boston Red Sox. The Cubs are 32-26 and tied for first with the Brewers. How'd the Brewers get there? Really? The Brewers? The Brewers. Anyway, you're in the dugout with me, Doug. Let's get started. Real quickly, we talk about all things baseball, and it's mostly about fantasy baseball thing, and it focuses on waiver wire stuff. But it is important to note that the USA Olympic baseball team, did qualify for the Olympics last night with a 4-2 win over Venezuela. They actually, in this set of qualifiers, after having a very poor showing in the WSBC 12, well, that was a long time ago, over a year ago back in Mexico, they actually they swept the entire tournament, winning all the games in the first round and in the second round. And they look pretty good. It's kind of, it is kind of sad because the best hitter on the team looked to be like it was Todd Frazier, which is kind of scary, but they qualified. They're representing us. That's pretty good. Interesting story, Eddie Alvarez, who plays infield for the USA team, has become, it's happened a lot, 100 and some time, but it's the newest time that somebody has qualified for Olympics both as a Winter Olympian and a Summer Olympian, because he's part of the USA baseball infield, but he was a U.S. speed skater based out of Cuba. When he got to the Sochi Olympics, he did have a tendency to crash into people and fall down a lot, but he did win a silver medal in the men's 5,000-kilometer relay, losing out over 5,000 kilometers to the Russians by, I think it was 0.27 seconds. It was very close. A little update on some of the more notable players that are in there, especially the prospects. St. Louis's Matthew Liberatore, who they got. He pitched 2 games, had a 1.86 ERA. He pitched the final game. He didn't get to win the final game. He only pitched 4.2 innings, and you got to go 5, right? But he looked pretty good. 8 strikeouts in 9 innings pitched, 9.1 innings pitched to be exact. Joe Ryan, Tampa Bay's prospect, he started one of the other games. His ERA is 5.89, which is not the part that I want to draw attention to, but he did strike out 10 in 4.2 innings. I see Daniel's out there. I know that I'm going to say welcome back to Fred, because he said he's going to be listening here, whether it be live or on the podcast version. The other notable is for the Dominican Republic, Seattle's prospect Julio Rodriguez. He hit over the course of the thing 458 with 2 home runs and 7 RBIs, led everybody in hits with 11. Looked pretty good out there. The Dominican Republic has not qualified. There's one more qualifier left. They're going to be in that last qualifier, and they will likely be the favorite to win, and they should win, but you never know. But it is a small Olympics this year. It's first time in 12 years. They have 12 teams that are in it, and they make sure that everybody, like Israel, already qualified because they're the Middle Europe Asian grouping, right? And then Japan got an automatic qualifier being the host country. So there was really only 4 spots, and I was worried that we weren't going to get one of them. So that's good to hear. Good to hear. The other story, which I'm not going to dwell on for very long, but the story is out this week that baseball is going to be cracking down on substance abuse, not drugs, but on pitchers using substances on their balls, on their baseballs, not their balls. I guess they're the team balls. So they can use whatever they want on their own balls. But there's going to be people. They're going to check randomly pitchers. They say they're going to do it twice in the same game for the random ones that are selected. And we're going to see some 10-game suspensions. And when you see that, I got to shut this off. When that does happen, we're going to see that pretty often. If it's done in typical baseball style, you're going to see some pretty average pitchers get nailed first. That's what they usually like to do. With the PEDs, they'll hit the middle guys, hoping to scare the good pitchers straight. So someone's going to get nailed for that. Someone like Trevor Williams, somebody in the middle of the pack, not that great. But anyway, with that, we're going to get to the meat of what we do every week, which is the waiver wire stuff. I do see some people. I should hit this thing so I can see the comments if there are any. Daniel, just some hellos so far is all I see. And hello back to y'all. This week, always like starting on the bright note, players return this week. Not going to any great deal on this, but if you hear this name and you've been waiting for him to return, he's back. Bryce Harper came back. Andrew Vaughn, Jason Hayward, Jose Iglesias, Cal Gibson, JT Brubaker, that doesn't look that good on his return. Asdrubal Cabrera, who hasn't even started since he's been back. AJ Pollock, who's the second best player in the Los Angeles area, named after a fish. Ke'Bryan Hayes, Andrew Miller, Marco Gonzalez, Max Stassi, Wade Miley, Jose Urquidy, Victor Robles, Seth Lugo, back after a long stay out, Kevin Pillar, and Peter Alonso. So the Mets are getting at least one of their players back. Still out, Mike Trout, Eloy Jimenez, Luis Robert, Byron Buxton, George Springer, Trevor Story, so many to name, Corey Seager. But we'll go through that just because I want to let you know that there's more to the injuries than just what's here. We're having a serious issue with injuries this year. It might be attributable to the fact that they didn't play a full season last year, didn't have proper warm-up into last year, didn't really have the proper warm-up into this year. It might be attributed to the fact that they're a little bit looser on some of these things, like the COVID and flu one. You can just say the guy has passed the test and put him on the IL for 3 days. I'm not saying that I'm not accusing any baseball team of lying about somebody being injured. They have too much integrity for that. They would never, ever do that. But Max Muncy was scratched last night of the Dodgers with a right ankle sprain. J.D. Martinez of the Red Sox was scratched last night with a wrist issue. See how that turns out. John Means left the game in the first with shoulder fatigue. That doesn't sound good. We'll see how that pans out. I did look at the schedule on him, and he is scheduled to pitch again next week. I don't know if it just hasn't changed or whether the thing. Yusei Kikuchi left the game in the fifth inning with a right knee contusion. Took a batted ball to him. Was pitching well to that point, but didn't get the win because he got no outs in the fifth. The Mets' Jonathan Villar has missed the last 3 nights with a right hamstring tightness. Yan Gomez missed the last 2 games with a hamstring issue. And after returning and playing 7 games, Adalberto Mondesi has now missed 4 straight, also with a hamstring issue. Which brings us to the injured reserve. A lot of names here, a lot of different body parts, and this is the big pestilence of fantasy baseball 2021. Is the number of people are injured. Last week I told you I had 7 guys get injured, and one of them came back, another one came back, put me on to 5. Had 2 people injured this week. Both pitchers, Hwang-Young Kim and Steven Strasburg. So I'm still at 7, which is way too many for that league where there's no injured reserve. Anyway, Kyle Lewis of Seattle went on injured reserve with a torn meniscus right knee. That looks like it might be longer than you'd like. Mike Yastrzemski is out with a sprained thumb. Every thumb injury I've seen this year has been multiple weeks. Victor Reyes out with a strange intercostal. I actually like the fact that he's hurt. I am sorry to you, Mr. Reyes, but you gotta, I'm a fan of Akil Baddoo, and Akil Baddoo is leading off today for the Tigers. I want him to get the shot he's getting. As I said, over the last 3-4 weeks, he's been doing what he's supposed to be doing, just been doing it 2 days a week. Rob Refsnyder ran into a wall and had a concussion. The last guy that I have 3 weeks in a row, I picked up the guy to fill my last roster spot, and 3 weeks in a row, they've all gone out on a Tuesday. That's pretty great. And they're not good players. Rob Refsnyder is a good player. He just got injured. The week before was Darren Ruff. He's not a good player. He just got injured. That's my curse. Mitch Garver went in for groin surgery. He's probably done for the year. Ramon Laureano of the A's has a right hip strain. J-Man Choi, after coming back, has a strained groin. I do think he'll be back in a couple weeks and is still viable. David Bote of the Cubs has dislocated shoulder. He's not actually a viable fantasy candidate, but his disappearing throws that team into a state of flux in many positions, and you might be able to find somebody that you like. Like this week, they had Patrick Winston step in and hit 3 or 4 home runs, which is pretty impressive. But it means there might be some guys that are somewhat decent in the deep, but don't play much in the most deep of leagues, they might have value. Lorenzo Cain has strained hamstring. Colton Wong has strained oblique. Max Kepler's out with a left hamstring. Roman Quinn has a ruptured Achilles heel, and he's done for the year. On the pitching side, we lost Steven Strasburg with a strained neck. You never know when he's going to be back. Jack Flaherty with strained oblique. Spencer Turnbull, who is just getting into with a strained forearm, and those forearm things you don't like hearing it. Justin Dunn has shoulder inflammation. Kwang Kim is dealing with back tightness. I'm probably going to cut Kwang Kim this week, but that back tightness is something he's been dealing with pretty much all year long and going back to last year. So it's something that hurts him, but it knocks him out, actually knocks him to IL, but the worry with him isn't the length of the stay, but it's the fact that he'll probably have 2 more this year. Logan Webb is out with a strained shoulder. Madison Bumgarner has shoulder inflammation. Chris Davinsky is going out for Tommy John. I only bring him up because it's our first mention of Tommy John. Cody Petit was really had the first 3 games were really good. Last 2 games weren't so much. And now he's on the IL with a sprained knee. John Gray's out with a right flexor strain. And Michael Quebec has strained left hammy. Waiting all season for Eliezer Hernandez to come back. I have him in a league. Came back, pitched very nicely. Admittedly, it was versus a weak Texas Rangers team. But he's back on the IL. And not just any IL. He's on the 60-day with the strained quad. 2021 is not going to be Eliezer's year. A couple guys got transferred to the 60, just so you know how long they're going to be out. Corey Kluber, even though there's been some positive news this week, got transferred to the 60-day DL. Same with Richie Martin, Huascar Noah, a person who likes to punch walls, and Aaron Hicks. They're going to be gone for quite a bit. Which brings us to the matter of the day. In the afternoon, in the chat room, on one side, Andrea is talking about how she won $61 in a 118-person tournament. That's pretty cool. The DFS, the key to winning at DFS is you got to do this once in a while. You got to win a second place in order to stay above water. You can't just win your money back or twice your money back. You have to get one where you put in 5 and get 60. Because it really is kind of thoughtful keno, like a lotto game where you're just thinking about the players, but you got to hit the thing once in a while because the cost of playing is too high. But congratulations to Andrea for winning $60. It's always fun. Hell, if I won $5, that'd be fun. I can talk about the $4 I won on Yahoo. Anyway, I guess I have this thing starting with outfield again. Last week I wanted to talk about starting pitchers first because I was really up the creek on starting pitchers, and a lot of things happened in the outfield this week. Jake Marisnick has rejoined the Cubs and could be activated this weekend. There was rumor he was going to be activated yesterday, but it has not happened yet. I like Jake Marisnick on the Cubs, and as a Cub fan, but I also like him as a fantasy guy. He's a little better than you think, and they like him for his defense in the center field. Aristides Aquino is rehabbing in Louisville. He's getting ready to come back and clutter up even more the Reds' outfield situation, and he might be. Well, he's not better than Nick Castellanos, but he could be the second best hitter on that team. Well, Winker's having a great year. He could be the third best hitter in the outfield, and that is true. Anyway, Seattle recalled Taylor Trammell, but they also reactivated just a couple days earlier Jake Fraley. Makes for some. Even though we're in the week 11, it makes for some interesting pickup possibilities in the outfield just because of Seattle. The Mariners recalled Lewis Brinson. I don't know why I'm talking about this any more than necessarily Martin's past, but it's just I like Lewis Brinson. The Mets outrighted Cam Maben. They traded him. They gave up $1 for him, and he was worth every penny of it. The Royals optioned Edward Olivares for Ronald Bolanos. I know that I talked up Olivares last week. I picked up in 2 leagues. I think that the fact that they called him up, and he played well, and they picked up a relief pitcher to send him down is really a function of the fact that he's going to be up again in the not distant future. Just he might get sent down, up and not up. Now he's got plenty of options. You don't replace an outfielder with pitching depth normally. Now the real thing is there's the Hunter Dozier kind of bridge out there is that they believe in Hunter Dozier, they're going to give him the chance, And even though Hunter Dozier is hitting 179, he has actually raised his batting average by 0.40 points since his return, because he was batting 139. The person that was sort of being the sticking point on this was their third baseman, Kelvin Gutierrez, who came up, and for the first 2 weeks he was hitting 350, 340 something. But for the last 2 weeks, he's been hitting under 200. So there'll be a point, and not just in future, where Gutierrez goes down, Hunter Dozier moves to third, and Olivares comes back up. So if you have Olivares and you can keep him, I'd probably keep him in a league like NFBC where you can't draft a player until he's played a game. I think this is a great opportunity to make a fat bid on Edward Olivares because you got sent down. It won't cost you as much to a good player. If you waited, you could probably get him for $7 or $8. There'll probably be 2 or 3 bids right at the bottom. But if you waited till he was called back up in 2 weeks, he might go for 60, 70. Anyway, that's out of 1,000, by the way. Brewers recalled Tyrone Taylor with Lorenzo Cain getting hurt. He's had some productive moments there for deeper leagues. The Phillies selected the contract of Travis Jankowski to replace Roman Quinn, which I think is actually kind of a better version of Roman Quinn. I mean, Roman Quinn's the kind that has such great speed that he's a threat to steal 40 bases if he played all the time. Jankowski is really a 20 stolen baseman guy, and he's very efficient at it. And not that he's the greatest on-base guy ever, but he gets on base enough that he can actually play baseball at the professional level. So, if you're looking for just steals, Jankowski is probably a better option than Quinn. That's not saying the roster either of them. It's just saying what these guys bring to the table in the recipe that is your fantasy team. Justin Upton somehow is now the leadoff hitter for the Los Angeles Angels, and he's actually in a bit of a resurgence right now, hitting about 317 with a couple home runs. Usually the batting average isn't right there, but right now it is. Houston had Yordan Alvarez return on Tuesday. I don't really want to devote a spot to DHs, so I'll put them into places where I think it makes most sense. Yordan Alvarez, if he were to play a game, would play a game in the outfield. I think he's played one this year. Oakland's Tony Kemp, second baseman, has been batting second and playing left field for them. And in this little stretch right now, he's hitting 278 with a 382 on base, and they love the on-base stuff in Oakland with 2 home runs and 3 stolen bases. If you're looking for stolen bases, this is the guy that you'd want probably over anybody that's available widely on free agency, with the possible exception of Jonathan Villar, even though Jonathan Villar hasn't been running the way he normally does. Christian Pache of Atlanta was activated from the IL and jettisoned straight to Gwinnett. A.J. Pollock returned on Friday. It looks like, based on the short term, that he's going to be splitting time with McKinstry, and I do think he would get the advantage on time in a split that might be 2/3, 1/3. Injuries in San Francisco that across the board, from Belt to Ruff to Yastrzemski, have put Steven Duggar and Tauchman regularly in the outfield. Duggar is making the most of this, and I can't give him a full-blown recommendation, but if you need a temporary fix, Duggar seems to be performing well enough. Tauchman, I wish, was doing better, but he isn't. But they're both been playing. Kevin Pillar has, since returning from taking that ball to the face, has played 4 or 5 games since return, twice batting leadoff in lieu of Villar, has been sitting out. So he might be a short-term fill-in. Kevin Pillar, given full-time playing time, has been an adequate player. Definitely an NL-only type player, but literally a guy that can, have a batting average that doesn't hurt you and hit more than 10 home runs and steal more than 10 stolen bases. Chris Davis with a K. After our friend Ed Heckman wished last week that Chris Davis would get healthy, Chris Davis with a K, the wrong Chris Davis, hit 2 home runs in 2 of the past 3 games. And somebody by the name of Gilberto Celestino is playing every day because the Twins have 5 injured outfielders, and he makes a heck of a calzone. In the world of outfielders, it is kind of amazing that I look at this waiver thing. I look at a shallowish league, 10 to 12 team ownership through Yahoo, and I look at a deep league, a 15-team, 30-man roster, 450 total players taken NFC, and it's different how things are going. In the shallow league, outfielders are just not there because there's a higher bar what you have to be a good outfielder. In the deepest leagues, there's a lot of, okay, I'll try that kind of guys. Nobody out here that says, I definitely have to get you, even though I'm going to recommend two of them. I'm going to recommend a number of them, but I'm going to give full recommendations to at least two of them. There are guys that could help you in those deeper leagues, but they have no business being talked about for the most part in the shallow league. That is kind of interesting. It's one of the disconnects that I've always seen with fantasy baseball shows is that the more interesting conversation is about the guys at the fringes, but most people don't need that talk. So we want to make sure that we talk on both ends. In the Yahoo leagues of your more common 12-team leagues with a bench of 3 or 4 and a couple of IL spots, the aforementioned Justin Upton is available in 15% of leagues. Somewhere down the line, he's going to be a 240 hitter, but right now he's not. He hits home runs, and that's the one ability he has. So he's going to get a little bit of a pat on the back from me and say, if you're looking for a short-term fix, Justin Upton is viable in those leagues for at least as long as he's batting first and he's hitting home runs. Hunter Renfroe is owned in 27% of leagues. He has really shown that he wants to be the left fielder for the Boston Red Sox. And I don't have any notes on that. You have to trust me on that. Brandon Belt, who's on the IL, was rumored to be getting off this weekend. Hasn't got off yet. He's only owned in 18%. He's outfield eligible in Yahoo. And probably the best of the bunch, and I hate saying it, is Odell Herrera. And I'll bring up Odell Herrera because it should give the Braves fan with Marcell Ozuna a ray of hope, because Herrera, he beat his girl. No one cares now, right? I don't mean that to be glib. I mean to say that this, in the world of sporting, as long as you hit, you can get away with almost anything. And because this is a game that people play for money to win or lose, I don't think you have the luxury of inserting your morals over the game. If you want to play a team that has all decent guys playing baseball for you, first, good luck to finding 27 of those guys, but then don't play Odell Herrera. And then, so in that, I will give my full-throated recommendation to surprise Brandon Belt, who I do believe in, always believed in throughout this year, just hasn't. He's been on and off the injured list. I understand if somebody wanted to cut bait with it, but considering what your choices are between Belt and Upton, I would take Belt and Odell Herrera. I would take Belt, 7 days a week, and twice on Tuesday, as I say. In the NFBC side, in the deep leagues, there's a lot of interesting names here. We said that in Seattle there were some injuries there, made them recall Taylor Trammell, made them activate Jake Fraley. Trammell has been tearing up the minor league, betting like over 500. I think that time, I don't think it made him a better hitter, but it did restore whatever confidence he must have lost betting 182. I don't think the strikeouts are going to keep him up. He's going to have moments where you're going to go, oh, I'm glad I had him, and he's going to have a lot of moments where you're glad you don't have him. I actually like Jake Fraley, who's owned in 0% of leagues, more, because the things that a person can do to maintain their time, and he was a very highly hyped prospect in 2019, a guy that jumped in prospect rankings from out of the top 100 before the season to in the top 30 by the end of season 2019. But then he played, and like a lot of rookies who are rookie didn't play all that well. The talent's still there. He still hits the ball hard. He still runs well. He still fields fine. It just sometimes takes players a thing. On this return trip, and even down in the minors, his batting average in the majors this year is $167. His on base percentage is .500. He's getting on base, and that's going to keep him around until the other stuff works out. And if you look at what he's done in the minors, it looks like he can hit. He can hit for power. He can hit for a decent average and all that stuff there. And he should be cheaper than Trammell, so he's going to be a guy that I'm personally targeting this week. I'm also going to be targeting Edward Olivares for the reason I said earlier, is that I think he's going to be cheaper and he won't be gone for more than 2 weeks or so. And you don't normally get an opportunity in an NFC type of league to bid on a minor league prospect when he's not playing, which keeps him cheaper. Tony Kemp is an outfield eligible also, and should be considered, especially if you're looking for stolen bases. But he could in these kind of deep leagues, he brings everything to the table. If he keeps getting on base the way he is, and steals bases the way he is, and batting second the way he is, he could be a bit of a gem there. Steven Duggar is the guy that I do like over God, who's the other guy they have? Not just Tacklin, but they have another Austin Slater. He seems to be showing that he wants to play. He is a fill-in as long as Mark Yastrzemski is hurt, but while he's not there. There's Miguel Andujar, who is, if you remember what he had done a couple of years ago when he was the starting third baseman, even though he didn't field it that well for the Yankees. He hit like 20 plus home runs, was like a runner-up for Rookie of the Year, had a ton of doubles. He's a guy that definitely could be a fifth outfielder in a 15-team league like this. Kyle Garlick, we talked about a couple weeks ago that I picked him up. I do like what he brings to the table. His batting average is usually it looks to be in the mid 200s, but there's enough extra base power that his OPS is kind of higher. I know that in our game we wish there would be more home runs than doubles, but that's who he is right now. He's somebody that we can get for $1 or $2, and he's perfectly fine. I think Kevin Pillar is worth a gamble. He's owned in 27% of leagues. There's those guys that can stay in the lineup because of their fielding, like Pillar and Kiermaier. And I like Pillar more. Kiermaier is also available. And just because the Mets are in dire shapes when it comes to their outfield, and the idea that he's in consideration to bat leadoff at the top of the order is a big deal to me. There are a couple other names that are worth a mention that I'm not actually giving recommendations to, but if you're looking for somebody that's really just going to give you average and can do it fairly well, there's a number of names like that in the pile, in the waiver wire pile too. Jonathan Daza of the Colorado Rockies. He'll, of course, be better when he's playing Colorado than he's not, but he's still a guy that can get you 300 average. Josh Reddick's a shoe-in for 300 average based on as much as anyone is this year. He's hitting 386. And the guy that I probably like the most is Harold Ramirez. I'm not saying he's going to hit 300, but he's definitely a 285-plus hitter. And in that Cleveland lineup, as mediocre as it might be as a whole, he bats cleanup more than he would on a better team. But that means that, a 300 hitter who bats cleanup on a team like that could, he could be 15 home runs, 3 stolen bases, but he could push his RBIs into the higher 80s. So that's my recommendations for the outfield. And my computer just went nuts on my thing. There we go. Which brings us to the next section, which is middle infield, second base and shortstop. Like I said, I do group middle infield and the corner infields together because it seems like with multi-position eligibility, the same names come up time and time again. It sort of makes sense. At second base, it looks like Matt Carpenter, our old friend Matt Carpenter, is playing second base for the Cardinals. I started the last 3 days at second base, and that pushes Edmonds to the outfield. They must be having trouble there with Bader always being hurt. The Miguel Rojas injury in Miami has pushed Jazz Chisholm to shortstop, which has made room for Jose Devers to play second, and he's been leading off, and that's kind of a different name. Everyone was hoping it was Birdie. Some people are thinking it'd be Isan Diaz, but Jose Devers is another one in that line of like Luis Arias, Donovan Solano types. Slight build, not a ton of power, especially not in Miami, but good bat to ball skills, and he does walk enough that he could push 300 on the batting average, push 350 on the on base, and that's the kind of thing that a lot of teams need at the top of the lineup. And the Miami thinks that that's actually preferable to Jazz Chisholm at the top, because Jazz Chisholm can hit, but he also strikes out a lot and doesn't walk much at all. So he's a name that's to know. My friend the friend of the podcast, Nick Gordon, G Cinco, the guy that lets me use his music. I would use it on this if I ever figured out how to actually do it on this thing. He's probably going to go back to the bench, maybe even back to the minors with the return of Andrew Simmons yesterday. But it is important to say that in the 5 games that he's played, he's hitting .375 with 2 stolen bases and a home run. He was a former number 5 pick and brother of D. Strange Gordon and rapper by the name of G Cinco, who we at the Dugout will always be rooting for. We root for both of the Gordon brothers. But Nick has done so much for us. Keep him in mind. Andrew Simmons will likely get sent down. And then the other question was this Gilberto Celentino. I actually DM'd Nick and I said, any chance you're going to play center field like your brother? See what happens with that. Anyway, on the shortstop side, Paul DeJong has been sent to Memphis to rehab, which is one of the reasons why I don't have Edwin Sosa in the recommendations later. Jose Iglesias returned to the lineup in Los Angeles Saturday, and he batted cleanup. It was versus a lefty, so maybe it's the lefty thing, but he was two spots ahead of Jared Walsh. Luis Urias on Milwaukee is leading off in Wong's absence, and he's got, in the last 7 days, he's hit .316 with 2 homers and a stolen base. Freddie Galvis is the cleanup hitter in Baltimore, as strange as that sounds. Of course, they had Jose Iglesias, the cleanup hitter last year. If you're playing Freddie Galvis and you're using him, I'm not saying he's bad. He's probably a good player, but it means a lot of things have gone wrong for your team this year, and my heart goes out to you. I hope things get better. Ronald Torres seems to be the shortstop in Philly, and he was kind of a bat-only shortstop a couple of years ago. I was actually excited when the Cubs signed him in 2018, but they let him go after they signed Daniel DeCelso because they thought he was better. The crazy thing is he may be a better fielder than Didi Gregorius, so he's hitting okay. I somebody to watch. And Story's injury in Colorado has allowed Garrett Hampson to start 2 games at shortstop, and it gives Brendan Rodgers, even though he didn't start the night before last, it gives him a longer rope to figure things out. But Garrett Hampson is on shortstop eligibility watch. So it brings us to the recommendations. Here we go at 12:32. In the shallower leagues, at shortstop and also at second base, you have Jonathan Villares, 43%. And I can't stop recommending him because the stolen base possibility of that guy is so great that he could very easily be the best of the bunch at any of these things. At shortstop, 3 other guys that we had high hope for this year, didn't start out that great, but have been good of late, are Willie Castro of the Tigers, who's also eligible at second base. He's 13% owned. Willie Adames of the Tampa Bay having a bit of a resurgence. Sorry, not Tampa Bay, Milwaukee, having a bit of a resurgence as he has moved from Tampa Bay to Milwaukee. And then Ahmed Rosario is also stolen base threat, 20% owned in NFC. All those guys are all available. I think I actually like Willie Castro the most based on what I saw last year. I thought there was more of an all-around thing. But I'm not going to argue with Rosario on his stolen bases, and I do wish the best to William Jimenez. Donovan Solano has shortstop eligibility in Yahoo. Not everywhere else, but in Yahoo. He's 13% owned. And Jose Iglesias, who's only 4% owned in Yahoo, is also a guy that there are some decent shortstop choices. On the second base side, Villar is there, Castro is there, Solano is there. But also 2 guys that is right now. Jonathan Scoop is so hot. He's hot as something that is very hot. And he's only rostered 39% of leagues. Ty France who I've talked about every week, is only in 36% of the league. He's also eligible at third base, probably the best third base available. And then Jonathan India seems to have gotten better this time around, and he's also gained the confidence of their team and has been moved into more often than not the leadoff spot for the Reds. He's rostered in 14% of leagues. So When it comes to the shallower leagues, the more common style leagues, I like Villar a lot. I like France a lot. You cannot ignore what Jonathan Scope's doing. Did I call him Shoop before? It's Jonathan Scope, rhymes with Putney Swope. Got to remember that. I like Willie Castro, but there are some other names that are going around over there. Just to put Tony Kemp, this is where I have his stats. Tony Kemp over the past 14 days, he's got 1 home run, 3 stolen bases, batting .371, batting second. In 6 years in the minors, he stole 141 stolen bases. That's why I say he's that. Over the last 14 days, Willie Castro hit .387 with a 1.186 OPS with 2 home runs, 1 stolen base. Jonathan India, who I know a lot of people are down on because he's had a bad start, over the last 14 days is actually hitting .407 with a 1.247 OPS, 2 home runs, and 2 stolen bases. So those guys they're nothing to be, not talking about it at some level. On the NFBC side, Tony Kemp, the deeper leagues, the 15-team leagues, Tony Kemp is 0% owned. There's not a lot, there's slimmer pickings on this side here, but Tony Kemp is legit. He would probably go from 0 to 70 in 1 week. Rougned Odor has been hovering around 30% ownership. He is what he is. When you buy and roster Rougned Odor, you're buying a low average, but some home runs and hopefully some RBIs playing on a team like the Yankees. He's at 29%. I saw in a lot of leagues last week a lot of people picked up Brad Miller, and I did like Brad Miller, but with Bryce Harper's return, Brad Miller kind of turns into a pumpkin. A guy who's a lot like Brad Miller is Houston's Almides Diaz. He seems to find a way. If the Astros are playing 6 games a week, he's going to play in 5 of them at probably 3 different positions. And he seemed to be able to pull us off for a while. He's a decent hitter. He's 2% rostered. For the year, he's got 3 home runs and a .278 average. I like him. And then we did talk about Jose Devers, who's definitely a guy you watch, at least for an average type side. On the shortstop side, Jose Iglesias is back, and I do like him. I'm going to stand behind him the whole way. 37% rostered. Nick Ahmed is finally getting hot. He's only a couple years removed from a year where he pushed 2020 as a guy who's really known for stellar defense and not much hitting. But there was a moment in there where he was almost hitting. Then you have the 0% rostered Jose Devers and Ronald Torres. But I do like Jose Iglesias, like him a lot, and there's good things to say about Nick Ahmed. Hope they continue. Which brings us at 12:38 to the corner infield spots. And a lot of things are going to change over there. And at first base, Joey Votto in Cincinnati is rehabbing this week in Louisville. Colin Moran of the Pirates is rehabbing this week in Indianapolis. Cleveland has recalled Bobby Bradley and DFA Jake Bowers. Bradley is among those guys that was thought to be a pretty good prospect to get hit with some decent power. He's had some time up in the majors already. He hasn't done as much as we'd hoped he did with it, but he's getting another shot. And there's no reason why, if the range of young first baseman goes from Bobby Dahlbeck to Jared Walsh, I could see him being at least a Josh Fuentes. Colorado optioned Connor Joe, which spells the end of his time. Houston had Yuli Guerrero return on Tuesday. The Cubs played Chris Bryant his 10th game at first base on Monday, giving him first base, third base, and outfield eligibility in most leagues. Despite rumors about Brandon Belt, he was not activated this weekend. The Red Sox do seem to like Danny Santana in the leadoff spot. He hasn't done as much with it as he had the first 3 games. He homered his first 3 of his 4 games, and since then he's been a lot less interesting. But they're still batting him top of the order. And the Red Sox are, no matter how many scrub players on this team, like Danny Santana and Bobby Dahlbeck and whatever, the middle of the order between Devers, Bogarts, and Martinez is deadly. and they're beating up on a lot of teams. So if you're bidding in front of it, there could be good times. This might rumors. There's a Red Sox team that so that's pretty. Jonathan Scoop is of course hot. At third base, Phillip Evans of the Pirates is rehabbing in Indianapolis. The Pirates have traded Edelmargo Vargas back to the Diamondbacks, which means that when the Diamondbacks released him 2 years ago, Vargas has made it to 4 teams, and then he's back to the team where he started. I always thought he was a better prospect than a guy that was. His time as a prospect with the Diamondbacks was curious because it seemed like every week he was getting called up and the following week he's getting sent down. And if your baseball season is spent, 20% just traveling between 2 cities, it might take you a while to put things together. I'm not saying pick this guy up. I'm saying keep an eye on him. And the Mets signed free agent Kessler Cuthbert to a minor league deal. Kessler Cuthbert had one half-decent year, but he was a guy that the Kansas City Royals decided to back Kelvin Gutierrez over. In Toronto, the third baseman is Joe Panik with Biggio on the IL, and I think that Panik can do something with that. On a team loaded with that much power and talent, a guy that hits base hits can both knock people in and score runs. Patrick Wisdom over the last 6 games is doing very well with 3 home runs. Right now they have David Boat, Matt Duffy, Nico Horner out. If you want to pick one for a week, I'm not going to stop you. But don't think this is a long-term thing. Don't think it's a breakout that he's the new infielder there. He's behind in the pecking order, behind a lot of guys, no matter how much he does there, including Nico Horner, including Jason Hayward, including Ian Happ. Asdrubal Carrera was activated 2 days ago for the Diamondbacks, but hasn't played for some reason. Evan Longoria has missed 2 games this week. Evan Longoria has been a very good player this year, but you have to take the fact that he's going to be missing individual games here and there. He's probably a bit of a nightmare for weekly lock leagues because of the fact that he won't play enough. But in daily leagues, he's a perfectly viable starting third baseman. Bryce Harper's return looks like it's pushing Brad Miller to the bench, and the Kansas City choice Kelvin Gutierrez over Edward Alvarez. I did not mention that Chris Gittens was called up as a first base possibility in New York. I know that George is on 630, wants to talk about him a great deal because he's the guy that brought him to my attention a couple weeks ago. But I'll tell you that, he was hitting 283 with 4 home runs in the minors this year, and he was 6 for 19 in spring training with 3 home runs, which isn't so hot that you have to push the issue and start, but that's not a bad player. That's a player that who should be given at least an opportunity. So keep an eye out there. In the more traditional league, the more common league, what they would call a shell league on Yahoo. At first base, we talked about Jonathan Scope before. He's 30% rostered. He's definitely a guy that should be in the mix there. Brandon Bell at 18. CJ Cron is only rostered 43% of leagues. Ty France in 36. And Mitch Moreland in 4. That's more of an NFBC play. But the truth is, Mitch Moreland, when he gets going, is a startable player in shallower leagues. Just hasn't happened yet this year. And it may not happen. Like he had a couple of decent games to start the week, and then the A's went to play National League Club and didn't have DH, and he only played 1 game in the last 4. And that wasn't even to sit for his lefties or anything weird like that. It's like the A's are going to jerk him around because that's what people do on these teams. Mitch Moreland is probably their best guy to play DH on a regular basis, but a team needs the DH to give people partial rest time, and it's just going to mess with them a little bit. On the third base side, Villar is there, France is there. You have Longoria, who was only 40% rostered in Yahoo leagues. It's probably because of that. It's probably because of the fact that he gets injured day to day, but he's kind of like the other guys like that a lot is Josh Donaldson. I think I like Donaldson more than him, even though Longoria is outperforming him. And you get a little bit of cut because there's a frustration factor. I call them the Chipper Joneses types because Chipper Jones late in his career was still one of the top 5 hitters in the game, but he played 116 games a year in odd ways, 4 games on, 2 games off kind of thing. It just took a lot of work. And baseball's a lot of work. Fantasy baseball's a lot of work to start off. Some people don't like the work, and so that's why they're staying away from him. Willie Castro, we talked about on the other side, and Jonathan India on the other side, also have third base eligibility in Yahoo, and they're worth taking a stronger look at. In the deeper leagues, the 15-team, the NFC type things, and NFBC type things, Asdrubal Cabrera is 28% rostered, and in a team in a 30-man or 450-man league, Asdrubal should be rostered 75% of the way. Harold Castro of the Tigers is 22%. Because of limitations as what the upside of him, I'm not that strong on. But if you need somebody for a short-term fix, there is nothing on the short-term wrong with Harold Castro. Mitch Moreland is 10% rostered. Dan Vogelbach in the new look Milwaukee Brewers, they are somehow tied with the Cubs for first place. Their leadoff hitter is Luis Urias. Their second hitter is Dan Vogelbach. I know Vogelbach strikes out a ton, but he also gets on base enough that batting second doesn't makes a decent amount of sense, and he can hit some home runs. He's only 5% rostered. I have to mention the 0% owned Patrick Wisdom. As much as I said, don't think about him long term. If you're looking for a week, maybe two, there's a possibility there. And then Chris Gittins, the name out of New York, which will leave them to. On the near miss side, you have in Yahoo leagues, Ryan Mountcastle is 51% rostered. I actually picked him up in one of my leagues because he was available, and I think that he should be rostered more than 51%. And I like him more than any of the other names on here, except for I don't like him more than France and Belt, but I like him as much as CJ Cron. And in the NFC leagues, J-Man Choi, who I know went just back on the IL. He's at 51%. He'll probably drop next week to under 50, but he's better than that. He just is. So on this side, you get my full-throated recommendations to Brandon Belt, Ty France, Asdrubal Cabrera, and I like what I've seen recently, at least out of Scope, and Willie Castro, and Jonathan India. So that's it. Let me get this catcher, the position I promised you that I would never spend too much time on, though I always do, regardless. I'll try to get through. Here's the notes. Alex Jackson is rehabbing in Gwinnett, so that'll spell William Contreras. He's a guy that has real power. He might have value in two catcher leagues. Twins called up Ryan Jeffers, who can hit. He doesn't have the power of Mitch Garver, but he can hit all around. He's worth picking up in deeper leagues. San Francisco Giants recall Chadwick Tromp has absolutely no bearing on fantasy baseball. Just Chadwick Tromp is the greatest living Chadwick, ever since Chadwick Boseman passed away, sadly. Pee Wee Reese McGuire is playing more than Danny Jansen in Toronto. I call him Pee Wee Reese because of his relationship to Pee Wee Herman. Eric Haase has 5 home runs now in 17 games. Guy that I've talked about with some real power, and that's what you're looking for. He has started 4 games in left field for the Tigers. I really don't like that because I would prefer to see Padu get the playing time. And your mean Mercedes caught a couple of innings in a game this week, which brings him to 1 game this year. Maybe he is a catcher after all. On the short side, Omar Narvaez, and I'll probably say it was 37% rostered. He's one of the guys I consider in the top 12, clearly in the top 12 catchers, and the ownership should be above 50%. Tucker Barnhart is pretty good. He's 7% on, but he's not quite at that level. I can't give 3 recommendations at the deep league for that. On the NFBC side, the side that is very, very deep, and you don't see much there, Tom Murphy, who's a guy that I drafted this year because I had high hopes. He has 20 home run power. Looked like he was showing that in 2019. And in 2020, he didn't play at all. And he started out really, really poor this year. But it looks like he's turning a corner a little bit. I'm probably going to make a move to try to re-roster him this week. I think if we wait till next week or the week after, it'll be very expensive. Ryan Jeffers, the new kid in town, the Twins at 22. Eric Haase, the home run kid that I talked about at 17. Thomas Nido, Maitland's own Thomas Nido, 15% rostered. I still believe in him. One of the great things about the NFBC's website is that if you go to that thing and look up Thomas Nido, it has the little red insignia that says that he's injured. And if you click into that, it tells you that he has COVID-19, and the story is dated August of 2020. So Thomas Nido has hit a bunch of home runs and has had COVID for 10 months, according to NFBC, which has got to be the worst case of that ever. Well, maybe Edward Rodriguez is worse, but good for you, Thomas, playing through that. Not that this is really all that movable on, but it seems that in Colorado, the preferential catcher, at least in the last month or so, has been Elias Diaz over Dom Nunez. I don't think people have noticed that because Dom Nunez is rostered in 71% of leagues in NFBC, and Elias Diaz is only rostered in 7. That should reverse, and that's it. So in that, Navarez, Murphy, Haas for the power, Jeffers, where you're looking at. Where do you find it? Post the thing. Where do you find it? If you tell me what it is, I can tell you what that is. I can tell you where I found whatever I got. Almost nothing. I mean, the opinions are my conjecture, where I take two facts and I glean something from the fact, but all the facts are things that I've read, and I remember where probably 75% of them came from. Then we get to the starting pitchers. And there's a lot to talk about there. And neither side is teaming with high quality people. No, it's a bit of a joke about the Tom's thing. If you go to the NFBC site, they have a note that says he has COVID. He doesn't have COVID. They just have that note. It's a dig on that site. It's just there to tick me off. But Telsino did have COVID in August of 2020. He did have that. It's just stupid. Anyway, it's just one of those things. I don't want to be the guy that gets up here and just says, let's take a moment to complain about it. That says like this site sucks, whatever. I know that there's two things that are going on when you have that. I have a preference, in my playability. My thing goes Yahoo, CBS, a site called Flea Flicker, ESPN, NFC, and Fantrax at the very bottom. And I know that a lot of that preference is just what I'm sort of used to. But there are some things about the NFC site that are really, really poor. And I really had high hopes for that site because more money passes through that site than anywhere else. And you think they would be better, where the money flows through. Like if you go to a restaurant where people are paying $50 a meal, they're going to have nicer tables and chairs than the ones where they're paying $10 a meal. And then if you go to one where they're paying $100 a meal, they're going to have even nicer tables and chairs and decor, right? Not so in baseball. In the more that a site draws money, generally speaking, the less you're going to get from it. And this does not count DFS because DFS has nothing to do with fantasy baseball. This is fantasy baseball sites. It's like because NFBC makes money, they put the absolute minimum amount back into the site to make their profits as high as possible. And because no one makes money in fantasy baseball, almost nobody makes money doing any of these things that even what I'm doing right now, I don't respect their decision, but I understand it. Anyway, back to the pitchers. In the Yahoo leagues, there's a certain merit level that you have to be a startable pitcher in a 12-team league, and a lot of these names really aren't that, or they're just on the cusp of it. These aren't really guarantees like you have to get things. And there are names I'm going to exclude because I just don't quite believe it yet. Like Shane McClanahan has pitched more innings, but now he's pitched more innings. He hasn't pitched quite as well, and that's a trade-off. Wade Miley pitched again last night. He's been pretty good. He threw a freaking no-hitter, and I still don't believe in him. And nobody believes in Alex Cobb except for his mother. But he's had a couple of good starts. Anyway, so those guys aren't going to be in American National List is over, but they are worth noting. I think that the question in the chat room is, what are the isolation rules? I don't think Thomas Nido has COVID. I think that what NFBC has put up is in error. And it's a really kind of a funny, egregious error. And I feel like I can say it because Thomas Nido is actually a kid from a Little League who I don't know directly, but I know people who know him. I consider him one of our guys. Anyway, and I like him. I actually have Nido on my team, and that's why I actually notice this, because every day when I look at my NFEC team, he's my second starting catcher. It has this fake injury on him, and it's kind of annoying. Anyway, here we go. At pitcher, Martin Perez, I think Tarek Skubal had one really good outing, and he might be at the point where he's taking a turn, and he's not at the point yet where you have to roster him in. Where you have to roster him in a league as shallow as this, but he's definitely a guy you should watch, or if you have an extra spot, you might pick him up to watch him, so that if he does, prospects generally take two paths, right? One is they remain not very good pitchers their entire life, or one day things click and they get better. We saw at the beginning of the season, Carlos Rodon, things clicked and he got better. And Skubal, I think, is going to be a good pitcher, and he's going to click and get better somewhere. It might be right now. It might not be, but it might be right now. And there's signs to say that it is, based on the strikeout rate and the stuff. Anyway, Martin Perez, I actually believe in enough to say that he's rosterable in a deep league, in a shallow league like Yahoo we're talking about. 20% owned. A couple of names: Johnny Cueto at 36%. He's going to give you some really nice outings and some less than nice outings, and together he's going to be a solid pitcher. This is at the cusp of these 12-team leagues. The difference is, like, if you're playing in a 12-team head-to-head league or roto league, the number of pitchers let's say in a head-to-head league, the number of pitchers a team will generally roster is about 6 starting pitchers. If you're in a points league, a team will generally roster about 10. And then in a roto league, it'll be in between. And so, there's a big difference between whether you're looking at 120 pitchers being rostered versus 80 pitchers being rostered. 72. That's where these guys fall. So Adam Wainwright's 30% rostered. I like what I see out of Adam Wainwright. And, if you want to bench him on tough road starts, sure, go ahead and do that. But overall, I think that at the end of the season, it'll give you decent numbers, better than Cueto. I think Mike Minor is better than he's performed this year. He's a guy that has, and I have him on this because one thing he has that most of these other guys don't have, though Perez is showing it and Skubal is showing it. They do a strikeout possibly, but Mike Minor can strike guys out. And then Jordan Montgomery of the Yankees is he Yankees or Mets? If I got that wrong, I apologize. Has shown that he's worth rostering. Anyway, the one name that I didn't mention is David Price, who's on 30% of leagues. He should be rostered more than that because he's literally the most talented guy on this list, and he's probably the second most talented pitcher on the Dodgers. Definitely the third. There's not 3 better than him. But the Dodgers want to screw around with you with another one of their 7th round draft pick finds with 5 average pitches, and they're going to pitch Tony Gonsolin. I thought originally this was because they were trying to be nice to other teams and letting them have a better chance of winning. And I thought a little bit it's the tradition. Like in 2016, they hyped us up about Jose De Leon and who's he, and Brock Stewart the year following, and Ross Stripling the year following that, and Dennis Martinez last year. It was like, yeah, there's a bunch of these guys that they have that are just kind of garbage. But the reason why they're doing this is that right now David Price is only playing for one thing, and that's his legacy. So his total number of stats at the end of the thing is going to be what people remember him by, right? By sitting out last year, he probably reduced his chance of being a Hall of Fame pitcher by 20%. And what the Dodgers have said is, because you sat out last year, we're not going to let you pitch this year because we want to make sure you're forgotten, because the Dodgers are pieces of crap. That's the only baseball reason why Price isn't starting over Gonsolin. That's it. Because the Dodgers, I worked for this one of the bigger muffler shops in Chicago. One of my 2 best friends in high school, his older sister was married into the family that owned one. I'm not going to name him because this is a really crappy thing that they would do. They paid their guys about $1 over minimum wage, but it was a good job to get because at the end of the month or at the end of every 2 weeks or whatever it was, you would get an extra paycheck, which is based on the actual work that you did. So their policy on getting sick, because they gave them sick time, was if you want to take a day off being sick, take 2 days off, because that's 2 days out of the commission run. So people would be afraid to get sick. And it's like, that's what I think about with the Dodgers, those jackasses. It's like now that they're shifting the focus of baseball from the East Coast, the Yankees and the Red Sox, to the West Coast with the San Diego and Padres, the Dodgers have to figure out a way to be bigger jerks than the Yankees. Anyway, that's my thing. David Price should be the fifth starter of that team. It's probably good for the Padres that he isn't. And the deeper leagues, Martin Perez crosses over, and he's a guy there. Vladimir Gutierrez, the rookie who's pitched 2 games of 5 innings, is rostered in 5% of NFBC leagues. He should be picked up. Joe Ross has had a couple of good outings, 17% owned. The aforementioned Ross Stripling has, at this moment, he's been pitching in a little bit of a hot spot. Trying to find guys to get there. I like Michael King. He pitched 1 game for the Yankees. I don't know if he's going to have a regular spot, but he's better than D.V. Garcia. I can tell you that. Not a lot going on there. In the NFC, in the over 50, the very near, that doesn't fit near, is Brad Keller, who I would count in there. I'm probably going to make a claim on Brad Keller this week because he fills the same space as Kwang Young Kim does, and does it with a little more strikeouts and a little worse ERA. Luis, I didn't go through the notes. Luis Severino is beginning his rehab at A-ball this week. That means he's quite a little distance away, but it is a big step. And Tony Gonsolin has allowed 4 earned runs in 10.1 innings so far this year. So in rehab with 2 home runs. When he gets called up and gets a start, he will not make it through 5 starts. Eric Fetty was sent to rehab, which the interesting about that was he was sent to rehab because he's on a COVID IL stint. And Cleveland recalled and optioned Tristan McKenzie again. And I think you're going to see it a lot this year. Then we get to the last thing, and we're at right about an hour, which is the relief pitcher stuff. I'm going to go through. I don't have much in the way of notes, but Brusdar Graterol, who everyone loved, has been optioned by the Dodgers. Zach Britton is rehabbing at Scranton since last Sunday. Those are 2 guys there. But then I'll go through what has happened in the world of pitching. In the world of pitching, there are a handful of pitchers, relief pitchers. When we talk about relief pitchers, we're basically only talking about saves. There are a couple situations, and I confuse people when I start saying, if you can't get saves, you might want something else, and sometimes you'll look at some other players. But when you're not getting saves, you're generally picking up, number one, somebody you think will come into saves down the road. Number 2, somebody that'll give you the other things that pitchers give you that aren't saves. Most of the time we think of the Devin Williams type, which is lots of innings, lots of strikeouts, but there are other things out there. The teams that have safe and good closers, Matt Barnes of Boston saved 2 games this week. Aroldis Chapman of the Yankees saved 1. Leon Hendricks of Chicago saved 1 and won 1. Ryan Presley had got 1 save for Houston. Ken Gilbreth with 1 save for Chicago. Josh Hader 2 for Milwaukee. Richard Rodriguez of Pittsburgh has been very good. He got 1 for Pittsburgh. Alex Reyes of St. Louis has 1, and Kenley Jansen is safe and good, but had no save opportunity this week for the Dodgers. Mark Melancon is also in safe and good. He's got 2 consecutive saves after blowing 2 the week before, which means that the possibility of him losing this thing is probably where it was probably at like 8% last week. It's probably back down to 1. Anyway, safe. There are a couple closers that are safe and just not as exciting. For one reason or another, Raisel Iglesias is safe with the Angels, 1 save. Ian Kennedy, safe Texas with 1 save. Will Smith in Atlanta with 2 saves. Edwin Diaz with New York with 1 save. He had 1 blown save. Hector Neer's returned, had no saves. There were saves went to other people this week, and Brad Hand of Washington had 2 this week. So then we get to these things. So we go team by team. Baltimore. Cole Sulser got the save on Tuesday. Paul Fry got it on Friday. Cole got the win that day. Hunter Harvey has returned. Of those guys, I think I'm going to take a flyer on Cole Sulser. Your guess is, my guess is better than most people, but it's still just a guess. But I always say this thing, it's like when I'm picking a relief pitcher, I want the guy the management likes, which they don't. I don't know if they like any of these guys. I think they don't like Paul Fry because of the way that they treat him as a pitcher. So I would put him last of the bunch. But I would take the guy with the most talent. And Cole Sulser has one very good pitch, which I don't think I could say about the other guys. Cole Sulser has an adequate fastball, but he has a filthy changeup, and he could be a very good player that way. Has it worked out that way? No. But he does have one good pitch. And if you remember me talking, if you listen 3 years of this thing, I was saying about John Means, he has one good pitch. He has a filthy changeup. I'm not saying that he's as good as John Means, but things can change is what I'm saying. In Tampa, J.P. Firestone got the save on Monday. Diego Castillo got the save on Saturday. There's no doubt that Tampa is doing a committee of some kind, and the two names at the top are Firestone and Fireisen and Castillo. I think it's about a 60-40 split for Fireisen. In Toronto, they have no save ops, so it still looks like it's Romano, but it's still got to keep an eye on Rafael Dolis. I'm not 100% certain on that. Kirinchik and Clase in Cleveland are a true committee. Both got one save this week. In Detroit, is it Soto? Is it Fulmer? Is it Soto? Is it Fulmer? Is it Soto? Is it Fulmer? Well, Joe Cisnero got the last save just to screw with you on Saturday. Fulmer hadn't pitched all week. It wasn't like he wasn't available. So Detroit wants you to know that they have a committee. In Holland, in Kansas City, you have Greg Holland, Barlow, Zimmer, all in a committee. This week's save went to Barlow. I hear that they're going to move Jake Brents into the mix for rotation because Kansas City doesn't feel comfortable going into a game with only three potential closers. They want to make sure they have four. Stalmont's on the IL. The guy I like talent-wise is Kyle Zimmer, but that's a situation you stay away from unless you're desperate. In Minnesota, Robles got both saves this week. I still believe that Taylor Rogers will get some of those saves, but the split's going to favor Robles because he's the right-hander. In Oakland, Trevino converted a save this week and blew one. They can pitch 3 times this week without ever pitching in a safe situation, which makes it look like Lou Trevino is the guy, which means this week Diekman's going to get the saves. Because that's the way it goes. When you think it's one guy, they turn the corner. In Seattle, you can kind of forget about all the other guys. Kendall Graveman has returned from COVID. He's going to be the closer. Maybe they let him pitch another game or two in a lower leverage situation just to make sure everything before they give him here win the game for us. But the other guys are kind of out there. I think Keenan Middleton supplants Montero as the other guy. Graven's stuff has been so good that they have been moving him in to pitch in the 8th if it's a higher level situation, allowing Montero, who's been horrible, to pick up saves with a 5.70 ERA in the 9th. I think Keenan Middleton will take that spot. So Middleton is a guy that will get some saves. In Miami, Yimi Garcia has blown 2 saves this week. I have been saying since the start of the year that he's a guy that has a mix that when he gets hit hard, and so he's not the guy that you want to pitch the final inning of a game. He's still their closer, and I've been talking about Floro all week, all year. But he had a really bad week. I think his ERA is really high. I'm not sure what it is, but I want to say it's 10. At least it's 10 for the last 2 weeks. But the guy that you should mention here is the guy they started the season with was Anthony Bass. Anthony Bass has been pretty much lights out since losing the closer job. So if you were gambling in Miami, I would go with Anthony Bass, though Floro's a decent gamble too. And I think Yimi, what I said that he would be out of the job by June. I'm still not wrong about that yet. In Philadelphia, Connor Brogdon got a save on Saturday. That was only a function of Hector Neris getting paternity leave. Neris is in the safe grouping. In Cincinnati, Lucas Sims is definitely a guy you want for saves. He's had 2 this week. TJ Anton's in the mix, but he's a lot better than Graveman. He's so good that they're not going to have him pitch in the 9th inning too often. he's going to pitch in someplace where the things are important. In Pittsburgh, Chris Stratton picked up a save, pitching 3.2 innings. Doesn't really affect the Richard Rodriguez world. In Arizona, Stephen Crankton is the closer in theory, but he may not get any saves because the bullpen is that bad. In Colorado, Daniel Bard picked up the only save this week after Carlos Estevez closed one last week. If I was going to play in that field, I'd feel, even if I knew Bard was the closer, well, it saves a save. Who cares who lets up a run? It's like I think that he's gonna be a higher ERA closer. I think Estevez is the better pitcher. Bard's the guy the management wants. It's generally an avoid unless you're desperate. And then we get to San Francisco. The last thing, Tyler Rogers got 2 saves this week, and Jake McGee said them both. Tyler Rogers is a weird guy to be the closer, but I think that he is mostly the closer on that team. The reason being, there's a lot of things that are working against Jake McGee. One is he's left-handed. Two, he is kind of erratic, and Rogers is consistent. I wanted to look into this more closely, but I think that Rogers gets most of his saves in home games. I'm not 100% positive about that, but and McGee gets more of the saves on the road. It's just a feeling I get from watching it. I can't back that up, but the idea is that this weird mix of 84-mile-an-hour pitches works better in that park than it does outside. But I would say that is a committee with Rogers right now being the one you want more, as I'm answering a question in the chat room. And he's probably going to be the favorite 2-1 to McGee. That could change without notice from their team if people get used to that 80. One of the reasons you can have a guy that throws 86 miles an hour on your team if there's only one of them. One of the reasons why the knuckleball is so effective is because there's never really more than 1 or 2 of those guys in there. If you see a certain type of pitch, it will no longer be novel. And Sulzer is improved. Sorry, not Sulzer, but Tyler Rogers is improved by being teamed up with a guy that throws as hard as Jake McGee. It makes the difference tougher to keep timing right on. But they'll eventually get around on it, and he'll wind up with Rogers will have a lot of saves, and he'll have a 4+ ERA by the end of the season. And so that is the closer report, and we're right at exactly where we normally go, which is about 75 minutes, and we're at 72 right now. In conclusion, the guys that got my big recommendations were Brandon Belt, Ty France, Jonathan Villaro, Martin Tavares, Martin Perez, Terry Skubal, Lucas Sims. In the deeper leagues, Fraley, Olivares, Almeidas Diaz, for what he's worth, Iglesias, Asdrubal Cabrera, Tom Murphy, Eric Haas, and Martin Perez. Tonight at 6:30, you have George and the Imbecile Show, where I'm sure he's going to talk a lot about Chris Gittens, everything you ever need to know about Chris Gittens, and more tonight on the 6:30 George Hubspin Show. Monday and every day at 9 a.m., the Ladies Daily Show returns with the interactive chat room. Join that if you can. And on Monday, 8 p.m., it's the Round Table, where I'll probably be there. Right now, Nick Castellanos leads the National League in average with at 368. Vlad Guerrero Jr. leads the AL with 338. Why did I say Junior? They don't use Junior. I got to get his name right. In the American League, Aaron Saval leads the American League. And Jack Flaherty and Julio Urias lead the National League, all with 8 wins. Wins is an important stat. Don't let me tell you that these stats are important. Oh, yeah, that's the one thing I didn't cover in my thing. I was talking about these relief pitchers. So did you want guys for other reasons? Right now, there's a couple of pitchers that I'm looking at because they get saves. The league leader in wins has 8 wins. And tied for second in the American League for wins is relief pitcher Yusmeiro Petit. With 6 wins, you have Milwaukee's Brent Suter. I don't remember what team he's on. I think it's Seattle. Kittredge. Andrew Kittredge has got 5 wins. If you really are pressed, I'd much rather have one of those guys starting than anybody from the Diamondbacks bullpen, anybody from the Colorado bullpen. It's like, what's better for you? Like if you're holding on Scott Barlow, the Royals, and you get a save every other week, is a save every other week better than, a win every other week? Maybe, but the win works. Look at those guys. There's another guy too that I think is King on the Rangers, but the Rangers the Rangers just don't win enough to give Kennedy the save, so I'm not going to go around. I'm proud of them. But the other three guys, they're okay. And with that, I bid you guys a happy Sunday afternoon.